Cheat Code Support Strategist, written by Clouds, read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 65, Luck. Hitoshi huffed as he carried another box out into the living room. You know, Ocha, you really could be using your quirk to make this easier. Oh, don't be such a wuss, extra credit, Kun. May rolled her eyes as she carried 2 boxes in her arms and used drones to carry 2 more in the air above her head. Just think of it as muscle training. Aren't your parents always saying you need more of that anyway? My adults are monsters. Hitoshi scowled. They've both been pros for like a decade, so they've had 10 years to build that muscle. I've only really been exercising for a couple of months, so of course I look like a weakling compared to them. Oh, the more reason to lift boxes. Izuku panted. Ochako, please tell me we're almost done with packing. Ochako walked in with 2 boxes of her own, and Hitoshi couldn't even say that she was using her quirk to show off because she'd taped over her pinkies so she would have enough energy to teleport all of this to her parents' house. Thanks for helping me move, guys. I know it's a lot of work for right after school, but the contract my parents' company is working on this week is for a remodel of an office building, and they want them to work weekends so that the construction is less distracting. Now is pretty much the only time they were available to stay at home, and since I kind of need them to act as anchors... Don't worry about it, Ocha. Hitoshi crossed his arms. I'm sure Power Loader and Netsu are more than happy to have a break from these 2 gremlins. Hey, Izuku pouted. Netsu thinks we're fun. Hitoshi raised an eyebrow. And Power Loader? Meh, somebody's got to give him gray hairs. It might as well be us. May shrugged. Okay, Gravity Girl, are you ready? Ochako took a deep breath and activated One for All. The lights in the room seemed to dim as a swirling pink and green aurora formed around her. Hitoshi didn't want to look away. There was so much power at her fingertips, and it didn't even faze her. She was so strong. He caught movement out of the corner of his eye and turned to see Izuku smiling at him knowingly. Hitoshi blushed and picked his jaw up off the ground. Why was he so embarrassed? Anyone would admire Ochako. She was amazing. Okay, Izuku. May grinned. It's your time to shine. Izuku jumped and stumbled as he hurried to grab his laptop. Okay, so, yep, everything's up and running so I can track your warps and try to figure out exactly what makes you unique. Okay, so we're weighing the boxes, right? That way we can see how the amount of weight you take with you affects your quirk while testing your limits at the same time. Let's start with some of the small boxes first, since we already know you don't have any issues with teleporting with small objects, and it'll give us a good baseline for the rest of the project. If you can work up to something heavier, we might even try having you teleport us. Ochako nodded, and Shinso picked up one of the boxes and put it on a hanging scale that he was pretty sure was originally meant for fish. But whatever, they'd sanitized it. This one is about 1 kilogram. Hitoshi announced, tossing the box to Ochako. You realize it's going to take forever to weigh every box, right? Izuku didn't even look up from his laptop. Good science takes time, Hitoshi. We can get a lot better data points if we actually know how much extra weight she's teleporting. And we're not weighing all the boxes, May added, just most of them. Hitoshi shrugged and sat down on the armrest of the couch, which was currently the only part of it that wasn't covered in boxes. Whatever. It's not like you have that much stuff anyway. Ochako stuck her tongue out at him and disappeared, making Hitoshi smile. Izuku's computer pinged as it collected the data from her jump, and he typed frantically, doing something that Hitoshi had no idea how to make heads or tails of. It was a minute or 2 before Ochako came back, so she'd probably gotten distracted saying hi to her parents. They must be pretty nice people if they were cool with the whole suddenly being given an extra quirk thing. Hitoshi's own parents hadn't even been cool with his first quirk, so he didn't want to know how they'd react if he suddenly showed up with a second one that made his brainwashing even more powerful. He shuddered at the thought, but thankfully by that point, Ochako had reappeared. Izuku looked pleased as he finished his typing binge. Okay, on to the next box. Mineta ground his teeth as he looked down at the street for the umpteenth time. An hour. He knew that stupid support student wasn't at the school anymore, so where the hell was he? Mineta couldn't have missed him, could he? No, he'd gotten enough of a head start that there was no way, unless the kid had taken a different way home, or he hadn't gone home at all. Since Midoriya and Hatsume were friends, there was a good chance he had gone over to her house after school instead of his own, in which case Mineta could simply nab both of them at the same time and kill two birds with one stone. The change in plan was infuriating, but ultimately it was doable, and this way might even be better in the end. The most annoying part was that his targets didn't live anywhere near each other, and he wasn't really in the mood to waste another half an hour commuting on top of the hour he'd already wasted waiting for Midoriya to never show up. He huffed in defeat and pulled out his phone. Kurigiri, change of plans. I need a ride. Okay. May picked out a box and handed it to Ochako. Everybody make your guesses and place your bets. Ochako hefted the box and hummed thoughtfully, I think around 8 kilograms. May nodded and wrote down her guess. And how much are you willing to bet on that? 10 Pocky sticks. Ochako smiled and shoved the box into Hitoshi's arms. Your turn. What's your guess? Hitoshi struggled to get a better grip and shrugged. It feels pretty heavy, so maybe 13 kilograms or something? Oh, and I'll bet 3 Pocky sticks. Not very confident, I see, extra credit con. May teased. Okay, now for the moment of truth. To the scale! Izuku grinned as Hitoshi handed over his Pocky. They'd started playing this game about 15 minutes ago, and Hitoshi had yet to win a single round. It was getting to the point where Izuku was starting to wonder if it was a passive effect of Uraraka's quirk, but she hadn't actually taken the gravity away from any of the boxes. If it was her quirk, had she always had this latent potential, or was it one of the things that had changed when she'd gotten One for All? There was a ping from his laptop, and Izuku looked away from the game to check. It was just the program that he used to track Ochako's warps, and with as much as she'd been going back and forth, it had obviously been going off all afternoon, so he almost dismissed it before he froze and blinked at the screen. Hey, Ochako? Izuku kept his eyes on the readings to make sure they didn't suddenly disappear. You didn't go anywhere while I wasn't looking, right? Ochako came up and looked over his shoulder. No, I was just about to leave, but I've been here for a solid 5 minutes now. I thought so. Izuku grinned and popped his knuckles, which means that the reading I just took was from someone else. This is gonna be fun. They weren't coming. Mineta scowled and threw one of his balls against the wall in frustration. It stuck, obviously, which was somehow much less satisfying than it would have been if it had actually bounced. Mineta growled and stalked away. All that planning and setup for absolutely nothing. Had it just been an unlucky coincidence, or had those two nuisances actually figured out that someone was after them? Knowing Cheat Code's intelligence, it was probably the latter, which meant it was a waste of time trying to go after them directly. They were too unpredictable. One of them was definitely Cheat Code, though. Mineta was sure of it. He swung his backpack off his shoulders and dug around until he found the page he'd stolen from Hatsume's notebook. He uncrumpled it as he walked, glaring at the various prototype logos like it was their fault he'd failed. He was moving to crumple it back up again when something caught his eye and he froze as a new idea occurred to him. He slowly unwrinkled the page again. Most of the logos were simple sketches in pen or pencil, but they were all basically done in black, white, and gray. Only one was in color, which made it stand out. If she'd taken the time to find markers just for the sketch, then the colors probably had a meaning beyond just looking pretty. Green, pink, purple. Green was obviously for Midoriya. It was even in his name, not to mention his hair. And if they were going off hair colors, then pink was obviously for Hatsume. They were the two strongest possibilities for Cheat Code's identity. But then there had to be a third. Someone close to both Hatsume and Midoriya who acted suspiciously when Cheat Code was mentioned and who had purple... Mineta smirked. Half-formed plans whirled around in his brain, and by the time his phone rang, he was almost in a good mood again. At least he was happy enough not to cuss out Kurogiri on the spot. Hello. Kurogiri greeted. I take it you are unsuccessful? Obviously. Mineta scoffed. It's all right, though. I've got another plan to lure them out. You've been trying to decide on a target for the summer camp attack, right? I think I might have a suggestion. End of chapter.